This Saturday, Israel's military said that Gaza City remains a dangerous combat zone. Earlier, Israeli government said it was preparing to immediately implement the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. The U.S. president had told Israel to stop bombing the enclave. However, Gaza's civil defense agency reported heavy bombardment overnight. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have accepted parts of the peace proposal. For more, let's speak to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Noga Tarnopolsky. Hello to you, Noga. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a confusing and a busy day. Media reports, rumors, speculation. Noga, can you take us through it all?
That is absolutely right, Will. I don't remember a day like this almost in 2 years since this war began. And we are still in a whirlwind, let me say, with conflicting reports and rumors and positioning from different interested parties coming at us every few minutes. And it's difficult to make complete sense of all of these changes ahead of concrete steps being taken. But in terms of concrete steps, I do understand that the Israeli negotiating team will leave Israel as soon as a few hours from now for Cairo, which is set to be the new site of renewed negotiations. Again, it's my understanding that the person Prime Minister Netanyahu has nominated to head this team is his right-hand man, his top consigliere, Ron Dermer, the former U.S. ambassador to the United States. And this is being received with great fear by the families of hostages here in Israel, because he was appointed by Netanyahu to head the hostage negotiating team some 250 days ago, when Netanyahu fired the then head of the Shin Bet security agency and the head of the Mossad to be replaced with this crony of his. And since then, not one hostage was released. So there's great fear on the Israeli side that this could be torpedoed. In terms of Hamas, the latest we're hearing is that there may be something of an internal division, and that may explain the conflicting messages we're hearing there. The Wall Street Journal reports, citing Arab sources, in other words, sources in Egypt and in Qatar, among the mediating nations, that there is a division between what is called the political leadership of the Hamas terror group that sits in Qatar, led by Khalil el-Haya, who was the subject of a failed Israeli assassination attempt just a few weeks ago, and Izzadin al-Haddad, the military leader of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. There may be a conflict there with Izzadin al-Haddad refusing this Trump deal, and possibly faced with a more realpolitik situation, the political leadership of Hamas in Doha acknowledging that they have to go for this. In Israel, we're also getting complex leaks from the authorities here. For example, just a few minutes ago, an unnamed Israeli source told the national broadcaster here that Israel does not take Hamas's declaration last night as an acceptance of the Trump framework, as Donald Trump did accept it. So the ceasefire, such as it is right now, has been very much forced on Israel. What I know is that the bombing and the shelling did continue overnight, but that today we were formally informed by the army that the army had retreated into only defensive positions, shooting only in self-defense. It still remains an extremely dangerous situation. I haven't heard of air sorties since the morning over Gaza, but it is true that the Israeli military spokesman in the Arabic language did put out an advisory urging the residents of Gaza City not to return, saying that this is still an active war zone. So what we're seeing is, on the one hand, extremely dramatic developments, such that we might see the almost miraculous sight of Israeli hostages being released, even within a matter of hours or days. That is clearly a possibility right now. And yet, this entire momentum could still fall apart if obstacles that each side may see in its interest come into play. One important thing to add to this, Will, is today is Saturday, it's the Jewish Sabbath. Much of Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet many of them are observant Jews, don't respond. It's unclear if these ministers are even aware fully of what has gone on in the last 12 very significant hours. And so Netanyahu could find himself with a rebellion among his extremist cabinet members also as early as tonight, just as thousands of Israelis again hit the streets in vast protest plan tonight to try and push this deal through.
Yeah, and so many moving parts there, Noga, as you outline. The internal politics of Israel, the leadership of Hamas, its political and military branches. I mean, if you just had to guess, what are the chances that this deal could be achieved?
Well, several things seem to have happened to change the atmosphere. One is that the strike I mentioned just a few moments ago, the Israeli strike against Hamas leadership in Doha, the Qatari capital, appears to have been a very severe miscalculation on Prime Minister Netanyahu's part. It was, first of all, undertaken against the advice of his military chiefs. That we know for a fact, against the advice of the Israeli army, against the advice of the Mossad, and it failed in its aim to kill the entire Hamas leadership in Doha. And it is a bee in the bonnet of President Trump, who has both personal and national interests, not only in Qatar, but in the entire Persian Gulf. So this seems to have been what triggered Donald Trump's final eruption of impatience. And his announcement yesterday that he was taking Hamas's statement as a yes and moving ahead appears very much to have been coordinated ahead of time with Qatar and with Egypt, who immediately put out positive announcements. That said, neither Hamas nor Israel are among the top stakeholders in the negotiation as it has been underway thus far. So it is easy on the one hand to imagine that this momentum now can't be stopped, and that if Hamas, for example, tries to withdraw its statement about releasing all the Israeli hostages, that Qatar could simply threaten this Hamas leadership with annihilation in the only place in the world right now where they are safe. Similarly, if Netanyahu tries to take back his very public acceptance of this deal, Donald Trump could cut off weapon sales to Israel. So both are right now in a bit of a corner waiting for Donald Trump's decision.
All right, Noga, thank you very much. Noga Tarnopolsky reporting from Jerusalem. For more, let's bring in Scott Lucas, professor